So after Elaine, we will then have a panel, and the panel is going to talk about their experiences because the schools that are coming have won Promising Practices, state and maybe national schools of character. However, Mark Sawinski from Brown Deer Middle and High School is out with the flu and held it together until this afternoon when he lost it. And I think it's a dirty trick on his part to get sick when he's supposed to present. But we'll forgive him, and in the interest of hygiene, and none of us want it, Mark is not coming. But we will have two other panelists that have gone through the process, and what we've learned in the past is that people really do appreciate hearing from actual schools on what their experiences were. So that's tonight, and we're going to pretend I just hit the music bowl and that we're all having some deep breaths. However, when you're eating pizza, that really doesn't go together. But pretend it happened. Pretend that the first part of it for a whole minute was sending a refreshing breath to your stress center. Women, quite honestly, carry a lot of stress in their shoulders. And sometimes we even allow it into our chest area. And guys seem to do it in their back and in their chest. And so the first part of tonight, for a too long mindfulness experience, if you weren't eating pizza, you would be sending nice, relaxing breaths and good thoughts to your stress areas. The second part would really be a directed part to say, and let go of the day. Let go of the kids that bothered you, let go of your colleagues that bothered you, let go of the administrators or the new initiatives that all bothered you. You can't do anything about it now anyway, so let it go. Just let it go. Maybe it was the traffic. Let it go. You're here. The last thing I would like to say that you can let go of as stress related is what kind of drill do they call it again? Yeah, that'll just send you up a wall, or some of your kids. So this is what's going to happen. We're just closing the doors. We're not part of it. So isn't that fun? We get to stay put, just like you always dream about doing on a required fire drill. If I could only stay a few minutes with all the kids, I'd get so much done. Okay. So now all of our stress is gone, right? Raise your hand if it's not. You come to remedial sessions after. Okay. And now I'd like to talk a little bit more about mindfulness, because I think it's really important to have some teachable moments about it. I know some of you are really advanced, far, far beyond what I am. So a couple of things. Over on the sharing table is the Mindfulness magazine that you can subscribe to, or maybe your librarian would like to subscribe to. I think it's got some good ideas in there. I also think it has some far out ideas that maybe your parent community might not be happy about, but maybe they would be. So anyway, I'd encourage you to take a look, and there's one of those sign up for the subscriptions on the cover. Just take it off if you're interested for your own practice. So the second thing I want to talk about is our behavior. And I'm curious, how many of you have ever done something and you've gotten there, like driving, and you got there and you thought, I wonder how the heck I got here? Raise your hand if you're like that. Oh, I'm so glad you're in here and not driving. How many of you, if you, when you shower in the morning or evening, if you miss a step, you can't figure out what to do in the shower, how to finish it off? Let's say you, all of a sudden you need your conditioner if you're a woman, and it's gone. And then you have to think, well, what do I do after conditioner? Okay, so do I wash my face first, or what do I wash first after I've done the shampoo and the conditioner? That is another automatic thing. Can you think of anything else that's just plain automatic? You just do it. Why are you laughing? That's awful. Anything else? Oh my God, yes. So total. And And when they finally get automatic, you say prayers of thanksgiving. How many of you might have thought of church as an automatic response kind of thing? Kind of set prayers, set behavior, you just kind of, none of you? Okay, thank you. There are some things that are positive and we do automatically. And there are some things that are automatic and they're not so good. Like driving and you go, I don't know how I got here. And you're safe, but would you like your mother to be driving around like that? Would you like some of your colleagues driving like that while you're on the road? It's like, oh my. So mindfulness has really studied those two things that are automatic. Some automatic things are wonderful. Getting dressed in the morning, when kids finally get a system to get dressed, or when I'm in a hurry, I just get dressed. I don't even think about it. So some automatic things are wonderful. Some automatic things like running in the hall, throwing paper towels into the wastebasket, and then you don't know, you don't even care if it made it or not. It's just what you do on the way out of the bathroom. Or when you're emptying a lunch tray and it's kind of slop city. There are some automatic things we really want to have ourselves and maybe our student body to take care of. So if we think of it, autopilot, that's just kind of reactive. We just do it. And so you get a stimulus and then you get a reaction. Sometimes the reactions are good, sometimes they're not. How do we break that automatic response? Because sometimes, as you know and I know, it is not a good thing. So mindfulness has researched it, thought about it, and what they would say sounds so simplistic. You get the stimulus, and then you just pause and you think about it. Just pause before you jump in. And then you have your response. I know that it has helped me in small things. And when I first learned this, I think I shared with you once, I wanted to drop something off at my granddaughter's house and then go over to UWM. And usually on that part of the freeway, I go on Appleton Avenue and go home. So I thought about it. Aha, I have an example for mindfulness. And so I did everything right. I thought about it. I took a pause, I got myself together, and then I went the wrong way anyway. So here's what we know about what we want to do with kids. We want to say that it's not foolproof, but it sure does help. And so they can contribute in your class meetings some of the automatic things that they do, like how they run out and take their coats for recess, how they do their locker if they're in high school, and what they do. And they need to be more thoughtful about it. Let's be honest and say it works a lot of times. And sometimes, oops, it doesn't work. And ask them to think about what they're doing, mindfully take a pause, make a mental map, make a mental picture, take that next deep breath, and away we go to a response that's more intentional, less chaotic, and might get the real results we want. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope next time when we get together, you'll tell me about successes and some of the goofs that happen. Because when we share with our kids the goofs, we level the playing field that none of us learn everything perfectly on the first time we try it, and even on the 100th time. Now, we're back at the class meeting. We've had some mindful moments, and now I would like to share with you a greeting. And this was my intention today. We know that brain research says when we greet one another, and we greet one another by name, that our dendrites do a happy dance. If we do it at a faculty meeting, we can see a tired faculty start to come around and resurrect from a busy day. Or we can see if we're high school people and the 7 o'clockers or 7:30 kids, if we start doing something with a greeting eyeball to eyeball, name to name, talk a bit, we get to see kids wake up and have an energy field. We know that happens. So my intention was having everybody get up at our class meeting and go sit with someone you don't know, just introduce yourself, and then it would be an activity of 1 minute, one person talks, 1 minute, another person talks, and then we can talk about the energy that maybe we felt or saw or didn't see. And then after that, because I know it's good brain research and I know people need to be connected, and I know that there's probably a third of your class that is not a contributor, this way they can't get out of being a participant. They have to talk, they have to say things. And honestly, they thought they would be doing those things too when they went to school. So we know that those two fast things could have happened tonight. Then I believe that we need to order the day. So I've ordered the day. We know it's me, we know it's Elaine, we know it's our panel to talk about promising practices. And then we also want to always include that teachable kind of thing. So I brought with me several things. Over on the sharing table are some cards, and you are welcome to take one. These I picked up at the national conference, and these are really any age, because I've never seen high school kids that didn't work for candy or didn't like candy or a little takeaway. These in a pack, I think, are 25 for $12.99, and you get a picture of an animal. They were designed for little kids, but in my work with high schoolers and middle schoolers, you can turn this into fun. And it talks about availability on this one, and it tells you points about how we want to be available in life. And in this one, with the chipmunk, it talks about orderliness. And in all the ones that are over there, help yourself for a free one, you have a little bit of a sample of what you can get for in your classroom, and fun to talk about the soft side of education with all kinds of good attributes we want kids to strive for. There's also another kind that says right on the front what the attribute is, like patience and cooperation. This is just a comparison. They're out on the market. Are any of you using these? Might be something you could consider ordering. You might consider PTA treating you to a pack. You might just ask your department chair just to see what you can get, but take one on the, from the sharing table. So here we are talking about class meetings, and in this class meeting, I especially wanted to talk about something not academic, but rather social emotional learning. And actually, my intention, how's my time? Okay, I should be done. Is this book that I would recommend no matter what level you are. I've used it with high schoolers and not middle schoolers, but I know that my grandchildren that are little liked it. And it's all kinds of attribute words, all built around making a batch of cookies. And it's something that many of us can relate to. And I will read about 4 pages. Cooperate. Cooperate means, you know, well, maybe if I put my glasses on, I'd read it a little better. So, you know how you introduce stories. No matter what level, what grade, you're always reading to your students until they graduate from high school. So, here we go. Cooperate. That means, how about you add the chips while I stir? Isn't that kind of a cute thing? Some parents have said they really like this because their kids might have needed it. Not mine. Patience means waiting and waiting for the cookies to be done. A few more minutes. Aren't I waiting so nicely? Still waiting. Can't you see middle and high school kids going crazy over that? I can see it. I can see Josiah, who's 12, going on and on about this. Proud. Proud means my chin is high and I sure do like the way my cookies turned out. Modest. Modest means you don't run around telling everyone you make the best cookies, even if you know it to be true. Isn't this a nice, simple definition, example of what these words mean? Respect means offering the very first cookie to your grandmother. trustworthy. If you ask me to hold your cookie until you come back, when you come back, I will still be holding your cookie. Fair means you get a bite, I get a bite. You get a big bite, I get a big bite. Unfair means you get a bite and now I get the rest. Compassionate means, don't worry, it's okay. You can have part of my cookie. This one, the partner is crying. So, imagine simple words like greedy being defined and shown, generous, pessimistic, optimistic, polite. Honest, courageous, loyal, envy, open-minded, regret, content, and wise. So, anybody see this working in their grade level? Anybody seeing it work in their Sunday school class? Anybody see it working with their kids at bedtime? I think it's one of those gentle books that can be read about 100 times. If it's not in your library, I don't care what your library is, what level, I would encourage you to have more than one copy, because if grade level 5 is doing something on it, you want enough copies. And also when kids hear a book, especially at the little kid level, a lot of kids want the same one, and they won't remember it if they're on a waiting list and they only get it 5, 7, 8 weeks later. But this is a very good one. And so our class meeting would end now, and I might ask, because I've had a greeting, we've interacted, we've heard all voices, we ordered the day, we did some teaching, I would end with a wrap-up. And the wrap-up would be, turn to your partner and say one thing you want to say about today's class meeting. And while you're talking with your partner, then I will get Elaine up here so she can start working with us all on the 11 principles. So the last activity of our very short class meeting is talk with your partners at your table on a takeaway from this class meeting. Thank you. I think Adelaide would love that.
I wrote it down. I want to get it for Adelaide.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything you need?
Nope.
Glass of water?
No, I got my soda.
Oh, that's better.
I know.
Do you want a
Just so I can put it.
time warning? Do you want a 5-minute warning or a 2-minute warning? What do you like?
Would you tell me when it's 6 o'clock?
Oh, 6 o'clock. Okay, then
fine.
you have 15 minutes.
Then I know. Okay.
And then I'll after you're done, I'll come up and take the mic because I do need to tell them a little more about the drill.
That's fine. And I put it up here just so I wouldn't lose track of what time it was. So.
And you do for the recording. You do have to use the mic.
Oh, I do have to use the mic.
Do you
Okay.
know what? I didn't say hello to the other to those on the
Hello, everybody.
wherever they are from.
Oh, but you're not videotaping. Here, Mark. Mark. Just so your cards don't get left behind. So I guess if you'd kind of finish up your conversation and say thank you and goodbye to your friend, and then we'll get rolling. I was going to say to your new friend, but I know you're sitting at tables with colleagues, so it's not a new friend tonight. As Mark said, my name is Elaine Gehring, And I have been in education since 1972, and I didn't leave it until 2016. So I was in there when we were still working by gaslight, more or less. But anyway, I worked for many years as a classroom teacher, as a reading teacher, as a gifted and talented teacher, as a grade level chairperson, as an elementary administrator. And then I had the opportunity to do a lot of working in mentor roles once I retired from my principalship. And then my last stint was as a secular curriculum director at an Orthodox Jewish girls' high school, which was a real far stretch from where I had begun my career in Cross Plains, a very rural community in Wisconsin. So I've been around the block a few times, I guess we'd say. I feel privileged and very honored to have the opportunity to talk with you tonight. I especially want to congratulate you coming in teams to this whole Laccs piece, because that's really how growth happens in your school. And I know how hard it is to bring together a group of people this many days and this many hours. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you're doing on behalf of your staff in helping to develop plans and taking them back to share. I recognize that you are all at different levels. We have schools that are national schools of character, state schools of character, promising practice winners, folks who are just beginning. No matter where you are on the journey, I hope you will hear some things tonight that will resonate with you, because the 11 principles is a helpful way to organize if you're at the very beginning stage. It's also a helpful way if you're looking to kind of re-energize or find some new spark for your program as well. So it can really work in a lot of directions. Over the years that I was teaching, and from the very beginning, I always had a quote on my desk, and it said, "There's so much in education that has nothing to do with life, and so much in life that has nothing to do with education," which was something somebody must have said to me in an undergrad class. Who knows? It traveled with me for a long time. And it was really when I came upon the discovery of character education and the opportunity to embed and infuse it into your everyday teaching and into your entire school, that I recognized that, in fact, character education could be the bridge that did bridge from education to life, so that it was no longer that it had nothing to do with, one didn't have anything to do with the other. I'm here tonight really representing two different organizations. The first one in blue, WCEP, is our state level organization, Wisconsin Character Education Partnership. We're an all-volunteer organization. I'm sure you've heard about it before in the midst of Laccs. There's a lot of, really what little funding we have in Wisconsin comes to us through our benefactors at WCEP. And the second organization listed just below it is the national organization, character.org. And this is really the national clearinghouse. It's the national organization that Margie mentioned when she went to the forum, to the conference several weeks ago. She heard speakers, she got information. They're really the overarching group. They're the group that really is the national level, and we're really not an affiliate, that's not the right word, but as a Wisconsin, we're one of the many states that is involved with character education through the national organization of character.org. So I'm kind of wearing those two hats. I'm going to start out with what, it's interesting because I'm beginning with it and you're going to end with it tonight. But I just want to do a little pitch for promising practices, because I know you'll be talking about that as you go through the Laccs program. This is something that we facilitate through WCEP, and also you can go for a national promising practices piece. Promising practices is not necessarily what you do when you have your whole program all put together. This is simply looking for a single element of your program that has been effective over the course of more than a year, that involves many students, that is ongoing, that has helped to develop or improve or really bring about your character education program. In your handouts for tonight, you have just a single sheet that's red and blue, and that is actually the guideline, that includes the guidelines and all of the information about promising practices. As we go through the 11 principles tonight, I'm hoping you might be kind of that might make you think of something that's going on already at your school, to say, you know what, we're already doing that. Or we really don't call it that, but we already have something like that in place. I think we could use that for a promising practice, because I know you will be encouraged to submit a promising practice as in the midst of the Laccs program. one of the benefits of if you are identified as a promising practice winner, I'll say, or a designee, is that then you receive a scholarship for a team of 5 people from your school to come to the Alverno conference for no charge, which I know is kind of moot if you're already in Laccs. But, what it would mean is that you could bring another team of 5, is the other thought. That you could bring 5 more people than you could bring from your Laccs group to the conference. And also, what we're going to talk about tonight is really an all-day training. I'm just doing an introduction tonight. Generally, the day before the conference, there's an all-day 11 principles training, and you also get a scholarship for a team of 5 to attend that. So there's kind of a lot of bang for your buck in terms of what you get if you are recognized as a state promising practice. And it's simply answering 3 questions, and those questions are right on here. The idea, what is the practice and how have you implemented it? How does it contribute to character development? And what impact is it having on students in your school? So please be thinking about a single piece. Again, sometimes people send us a wonderful description of a whole overarching program, and that's really not what we're looking for. We're looking for, I'll use the example like things that have worked in, been one in the past. Might be school meetings, might be buddy programs, might be ongoing community connections that your school has with students. Might be a whole lot of different peer mentor. At the high school, students, regular ed students working with students in special ed programs, going outside the school to do programs, whatever. There's a whole range of them, and they're actually, I suggest at the bottom of this slide that you check the WCEP website to see which of these might have been awarded in the past, because maybe it will trigger for you an idea, and it doesn't have to be, you're not recreating the wheel. It's something that you already have in place because you want to have been doing it for at least a year. A school year cycle, because you really need that in order to show the impact of it. So that's the first little pitch. And the second little pitch, again, is something you'll be talking about later, and that's kind of the next tier up, and that would be State School of Character. Many schools in Wisconsin start out doing promising practices, and that becomes kind of a good jumping off place, because then people start saying, wow, we got an award for that. That's cool. I didn't even realize that was such a big deal. It begins to build some momentum in your school that you've been recognized for doing this single ongoing program as a promising practice. And over the years, those begin to grow and develop, and as your school develops, then you might think about applying for a State School of Character. And that's a much more extensive process, and those of you who've been through it, I'm sure would be shaking your heads going, yeah, I get that. But the idea is that it's kind of a goal to shoot for, because that's what you want, is to really identify the things that are ongoing in your school and look for ways that you can build leverage and then be building even more with your goal of eventually being a State School of Character. Now, we talk about State School of Character, we talk about National School of Character. What we're really talking about is our goal in all of this is to identify students of character. Now, I'm going to go down here to do this because I don't know how else to do that from up here. But if we talk about a student of character, this is a piece from this summer that you might have seen on the news. This is wait. No. And that would be the end of it, but let me take you back to the beginning of it. This is not the right one. No, it doesn't take me all, it doesn't start at the very start. It should start with the news guy talking. He just had it going a minute ago. Sorry about that. Just what I didn't want to have happen. Well, okay, wait. I think this is the end. I don't understand. We had the start of it up before. Okay, let me tell you the story that goes with that video. I apologize. It was the start of a news story. The story of this is that there were two teams playing against one another. I believe it was in Minnesota for like a state final. The pitcher pitches, the guy is out on the third strike. And the student, the pitcher, doesn't run off with his buddies to celebrate. He runs up to the batter. Because the pitcher and the batter have been friends and teammates on a traveling team all their high school careers. So he had struck out his good friend. And instead of going to celebrate with his team, he goes up. I don't know why it's doing that. Did it say? Yeah. So instead of going off to celebrate, he feels such empathy for his student for his friend, and instead of the woohoo, we won, his heart just goes out to this friend who he has struck out. But it's the idea of, and it was a great piece if I had done it right, the idea that what we're looking for is students of character. Because isn't exactly what that young man demonstrated what we would hope for all of our kids to think about, to recognize? When Margie talked about all the words in that book, you know, he was showing determination, he was showing that he was really persevering. He had worked long and hard with his team. But then he also showed empathy and kindness and really demonstrating all the greatest things we would want of kids. And I apologize. I hope the rest of them will go better. Anyway, but it's a great example of how students of character are really our goal. That's really our target, our students of character. Okay, so now I lost the flipper. As we go through, okay, I'm sorry, this is not, as we go through the 11 principles, this, as I said, is normally kind of a full day, all day piece. Well, let's just let everything fall down here. So I'm going to be giving you just an introductory bit and piece. But I want to talk a little bit about what the 11 principles are, because I know throughout Laccs, you end up hearing a whole lot of information and trying to find a way to incorporate it all and keep it all together so it kind of makes sense for you. What the 11 principles are is it's really a framework. I think of it as a tree. That if you want to have an effective character education program in your school, it's great to have this program and that program and this program and this program, and we all have that. But you're looking for a way to organize it into a comprehensive piece where everything fits together. So if you think of your character education program in your school as a tree with 11 branches, each of these 11 principles just says, here's something for you to consider. Here's something for you to make sure that you include. Now, what it looks like at Orchard Lane and what it looks like at Messmer St. Rose are not going to be the same. Even within a district, the way the leaves on your branch for a certain principle won't look like the school down the road necessarily. Because you want it to be geared to your students and your staff and all of the stakeholders in your school. So that's why we say that, you know, that each of these is unique. It's not a curriculum or a recipe. This isn't saying, in order to do it well, here's what you need to do. It's simply saying, here's a category to consider, and have you, in fact, addressed items within that category or within that branch. And then your programs become the leaves that hang off of that. As I said earlier, it could be a place to begin or a place to re-energize. You know, there are some tools and strategies that are available online. But the fact is, I used to say when I do this conference, and right next door would be one of those wonderful sales areas where there were 82 vendors and they were all selling something related to character ed. And I would say to people, you don't need one thing from that room next door. You want to look for what you're already doing in your school and how can you embed character education and your core values into what you're doing already. Because what teacher in your school is saying, could you send me some more stuff that you want me to do? Like, give me some more sheets, give me some more booklets, give me some more lesson plans. Heck no. I mean, their plate is full already. So we're not saying this is something more for you to do. We're saying when you're doing this lesson already, think about what are the core values of our school, what are important to us, and how could I make sure that I touch upon those, that I incorporate those in what I'm doing already. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the 11 principles, that they are in fact something to consider, that they're all leaves. Now, already in your binders, you have kind of a thick booklet that probably looks like this. You don't need to take it out. This is the whole description of a much longer and better description of the 11 principles than I'm giving you tonight. I'm giving you just an introduction, kind of to get you thinking about it, so maybe it might be helpful as you move along through Laccs. But you already have this. And within this, it talks about what do they mean under each of those categories. And at the very, and in each of them, it has what they call like key indicators, like what would you look for in your school that you're already doing, or maybe perhaps that you could be doing in your school. So you already have the full description of it, and you also have a short list of them, if you do want to look at that as you're going along here. Connected to that promising practice application information. We're just going to keep throwing things around until I get it right. You have a sheet that looks like this, and that actually lists the 11 principles, just so you would see it as we go through, because we'll talk about them all. But that gives you kind of the list of those 11. And you see it's really kind of 11 different approaches, different aspects of character education. So we're going to go through those 11. I once heard a speaker say you should stand tall so people can see you. You should speak clearly so they can hear you, and you should talk briefly so they'll like you. But I don't have that opportunity to talk briefly, so I'm going to talk as quickly as I can and still give you the overview as much as we can of the 11 principles, so that you at least have a sense as you're going through and you hear about the 11 principles, what's that all about. Michelle Borba talked about how character education isn't a noun, it should be a verb. And so we have an 11-minute video that hopefully will run better than my last video, that gives you kind of an overview of schools that have incorporated character education into their school. And again, we're going to talk about infuse and embed. That's what they're going to talk about. That's what I'll talk about. It's that idea of that it isn't something that the counselor does at 2 o'clock on Thursdays. And it isn't something that the second grade is really into and nobody else pays much attention. And it isn't something that the principal wants you to do, but everybody's trying to find a way to, get a way around it. It's something that's part of the guts of your school. And that's what I think you'll see here. I hope that you'll see some things that look familiar to you and you say, I never even thought of that as being part of character education. We do that all the time. I also hope that you will see some things maybe that you see them doing at a 6th grade level or a 4th grade level and say, gosh, I could use that in my school. We could use that in our classroom. You'll see kindergartners up to seniors in high school. Please don't be stuck on, they only, seniors do that. My kids wouldn't do that. Because it's a matter of how it would work at your school. When we get done with it, we're going to do a 2-minute partner talk, and we're just going to say what resonated with you, what looked familiar to you, and were there any ahas. It's just an opportunity to see schools that have done this effectively. These are all national schools of character and how they've embedded it. Okay, now you think this will work? We'll see. We didn't start this one before, so maybe I'll be okay on this one.
And that our fundamental responsibility is the academic preparation of our children. But we also understand that ultimately their success in life is going to be dependent upon a lot of other things, like how well they understand themselves, how well they relate to others, and their ability to be educated around issues such as integrity, self-discipline, respect, responsibility.
Character education is a program that is teaching students to be good people. It's helping them to be good people in their words and their actions.
Albert, you said it made you feel happy when I let you play soccer with me last week.
Character has to be taught. You have to take the time to let the students know what respect is and what it looks like and what it sounds like and how they can show it. And reflect on times that they've shown it so that it can be internalized and become part of them.
So we all know that teachers today have, quite a lot on their plate, quite a lot of responsibilities, new curriculum, new testing, and if they see character education, they may feel like, oh no, it's another subject that I have to incorporate into my already, overstuffed day. And what they need to realize is that it's not a subject to be taught. It's a culture that you create. It's something that's infused into our lives here. It's infused in the cafeteria, out on the playground, when they come in the morning. It's just a part of our lives here. Okay, now we'll move on to the next part of our meeting, and Nathaniel, you are in charge now. Take it away.
Now we're going to share experiences from class within the last 2 weeks, positive and negative. Okay, we're going to start from Mallory.
In a high-profile study, business leaders identified people skills as being more important than knowledge-related skills in the workplace. Smart schools are intentionally building these skills in students. Students practice being understanding of others, taking responsibility for their actions, and solving problems with their peers.
So it kind of made me upset, and I asked him why, and he said, I don't know, and I don't care. So does anyone have a solution? Albert?
I think we should talk to that person, like, more seriously.
A lot of people like class meetings, and I like class meetings especially because when I have a problem, I can get that person in the middle of the circle and tell them how I feel. Because when you tell them how you feel, it's like peer mediation, because you can actually communicate with them and you can solve your problem.
Okay, who'd like to go first?
I'll go first. I get mad and I stand up and I tell him to stop tapping my shoulder, and I called him some names. And the teacher, he heard us, and then he sent us to the mediation room.
So basically you were taking this important test in class and you started tapping on the shoulder, and after a while it really started to annoy you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How did you feel when this happened?
Well, I felt mad a lot because he was like making me miss the test, and I was also a little scared.
What's your side of the story?
I was sitting there doing my test, and I didn't understand the question, so I started tapping Katrina, and then she
We had a high suspension rate for fighting. And in the past 5 years, just because of character education, our suspension rate has dropped tremendously. It's amazing what it's done.
It's like a win-win situation with mediation. I mean, kids are talking to kids, they're solving their problems, and they don't feel apprehensive. And peer mediation is it's a wonderful project. If it wasn't in the school, I don't know what would happen to the school.
I feel like I'm here instead of metal detectors.
Developing caring and respectful behavior in students is not only important to workplace preparedness and school safety, it also increases students' bonding to school and their desire to lead by example.
We pair 75 seniors with 75 freshmen for a year-long mentoring program. And the seniors also play a leadership role in our character education efforts. We have a freshman ethics seminar that they teach to the entire freshman class that first week of school. And we have a senior ethics seminar that prepares them for the adult ethical dilemmas in the workplace. And we bring community members in, and the seniors play a role as table leaders in that program. And by focusing on some of these ethical issues and these core values, we think it improves behavior.
I think the difference that this makes in their lives is they have these positive role models so that they can integrate these values for lifelong skills, so that when they get into the workforce, they can then possibly mentor somewhere else. So when they become seniors, the freshmen, they can then act as role models for other students to come in.
I thought it was neat to have someone there that wanted to help me out whenever I had my problems when I was a freshman. And then before she graduated, I told her that I want to become a senior mentor for a freshman because I like helping out others.
Students learn best when they feel connected to their school. And creating a school that has a climate of caring and feeling safe and feeling a part of it brings out the positive academics in the students, because they're not worried about who's going to tease me today or not having someone to play with on the playground, because they feel cared for and they feel a part of the school.
I would like to thank you for showing caring when you help me walk around the school every day. You deserve this.
Schools can extend this proactive approach to the academic curriculum by infusing it into the way students learn. Cooperative learning strategies provide students with opportunities for putting positive character traits into action.
Literature circles offer a great opportunity for character development. For example, they have to respect each other in order to be able to speak in the literature circles. Also, they have to use a great deal of self-discipline and not interrupting each other. Students must develop their own discussion, questions, and or topics, and it gives them a sense of I matter, what I have to say matters.
Teachers can also help students build character by addressing ethical issues in the academic content of the curriculum.
Something before. He doesn't seem to brag about it. We're a town and it's an icon.
Teaching ethics or ethical issues, if you can even describe it that way, the reason why it's important is because it's there and central and critical no matter what you do. Even if you made an effort to avoid the ethical or the moral dilemmas, you are reading the Odyssey in my class, you are reading Of Mice and Men, you are reading The Old Man, the Sea, and you are absolutely surrounded by those issues.
You are in groups of 4 and 5, so I want you to take a copy of the citations that are in the text, and then you will be discussing if they were fair or if they were not fair.
It's important for them to get peer feedback to find out what each of them wants to say about fairness and unfairness, and it's important for them to hear each other's views. They can talk about history, whether things were fair or unfair in the past, and they can relate it to situations that they have on the playground or at lunch.
To America to have freedom, but after that 7 years you would have nothing but freedom. But we couldn't do what we wanted. We came to America for freedom, and we wouldn't get all the freedom we wanted. They agreed to it. Yeah, but if you had time...
We all know that children learn at different paces, in different times, and in different ways. And if a climate of respect is formed through character education, you're setting a climate for success. We have found that our children really care about their performance. They care about their work. They're worried, they're intense about doing the right thing. I just don't see academics succeeding without character education.
Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education." By creating caring school communities, promoting ethical leadership in students and staff, and enriching academic learning with character-building skills and content, schools across the country are making this goal a reality.
Self-discipline means having control of your actions, because if nobody had control of their self, then it would just be, everything would just be out of control.
When people respect me, that means that they always they listen to me when I'm trying to tell them something, and when I give them something, they respect it. If
you would go ahead and talk to the person next to you. And now, Julie, what did you do so I don't look this up? Oh, down there. Oh, on the keyboard. Okay. I'm sorry. If you would take just 2 minutes and talk with the person next to you about either what resonated with you in the video, what looked familiar that maybe you haven't thought of character education, or some ahas that you had, or table talk, however you want to do it. Go ahead and chat. Okay, thank you. I know you could talk for about 20 more minutes, so, but they'll be pulling me off with a cane in a little while. So anyone have something to share of something at their table that people said what resonated with them or what they spotted that looked familiar? Doesn't have to be what you said, it could be what one of your brilliant table mates said. How about something that looked familiar that you might not have thought of as a character ed component for your school? Anybody see something that looked familiar to them that they're doing already? How about somebody from Orchard Lane? Anybody have something that you saw familiar? Okay, some things that you could incorporate. Okay, some things you saw that you could incorporate. Yes. Sure. Mm-hmm. And another element of that is spending time on it says this is important. That's the other thing. I mean, if we talk about cooperation and we talk about kindness and we talk about empathy, but we never take any time or the opportunity to talk about it, so what? You know, it just kind of doesn't look like, you know, you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is, or whatever that phrase is. That idea that if you think it's important, you have to look for opportunities to talk about it. Thank you for sharing those. I know there's others that you saw, even peer mediation. I mean, people have been doing that for a million years, and I don't think anyone ever really thought, not for a million, but for a long time. And I don't think anyone ever thought of that necessarily as a character education piece, or even the literature circles. But that, in fact, is building the opportunity to listen and learn empathy and also practice social emotional learning skills. So a lot of those things that we do, and that's the other thing, is we do a lot of things in each of our schools that are already very effective in helping students to develop character. Part of the challenge, I think, is to spot and recognize and acknowledge those things. This isn't about we're going in to do all new things. This is about recognizing it and celebrating it and kind of calling it out as, look, we're already doing this. So that you draw in people simply by recognizing that they're already doing some good things that they don't even know that they're doing. And a lot of what we do in education as good teachers and good instruction is really almost unconscious. After you've done it over the years, Margie talked about that, you know, automatic piece, that the piece that we just automatically do. A lot of what we do in education is unconscious. The dilemma of that is that if you don't even realize you're doing it, you're not so likely to do it again. And it was probably something very effective. So the idea is that if you can bring these kind of behaviors and these kind of infusing and embedding that they're already doing up to their conscious level, then you have an opportunity to replicate it. Because if I understand that I did it and I understand what happened because of it, then I can see where I could use it again. If it just happens like good luck, I mean, we all talk about those teachable moments. That's all well and good, but we want to move beyond that to where we really are planning this and we're incorporating this, and it's part of what we know that we're doing because it matters. Margie?
Along with that, I was just thinking about the peace benches that you see these days at elementary schools so much, or friendship benches or problem-solving benches.
Right.
Taking that another step could be that all of the clubs that meet in that school learn about a friendship or a peace bench or a talking bench or a lonely bench or whatever you call it, so that then the Boy Scouts know how to do it, the Girl Scouts know how to do it, the Pearls group knows how to do it, so that the systems are then even carried beyond the classroom.
Right. And the idea that once you present it, sometimes when we get those things on our playgrounds or some, whatever we embed or we begin to do, we kind of talk about it once and then we don't return to it again. And I think if you begin to recognize kids of, oh, I saw, Jimmy, I saw you sitting out on the friendship bench and really helping Bobby. I mean, whatever it is, just acknowledging it when it happens. And that's true for teachers as well. we used to do something at my school we called, Coke and a compliment, and it was a staff meeting thing, and I think it really could have been character, but I didn't know about character when I was doing that. So Coke and a compliment happened every staff meeting, and I'd bring in a 12-pack of Coke, and a teacher would just call out another teacher with a compliment for something that they had done or that they'd seen them doing well with a staff member, and then they'd give them a can of Coke. The can of Coke didn't matter. It was just kind of the catch thing. But you could easily do that with character and that idea of whatever your core values are. The good news of something like that is it recognizes, people feel good. Even when we're adults, we feel good for being recognized for what we did. And again, it puts a name on that, look at what she did and look what a difference it made. It also brings the element of character into every single staff meeting when you do that, because then it's always there, and it isn't the principal or the guidance counselor or whoever is leading the meeting talking about it. It's one another recognizing what someone did that really either demonstrated character or helped a student to build character. So there's a lot of little things like that that you're probably already doing that you just want to look for ways to highlight them and shine a light on them, maybe is what we're saying. One of your handouts today is just a blue grid. It lists all the 11 principles, and I'm going to go through them fairly quickly, and I apologize for that, because if we were doing it, I would want much more opportunity for you as a team to be talking about each one and looking at what you're doing. We just don't have that luxury tonight because I just have to kind of give you the fast and dirty overview, so to speak. This sheet is for you to use in any way you want. If you want to use it as a note-taking tool, that's fine. If you want to use it as we talk about things to jot down things that you are already doing in your school, maybe something that you could use as a promising practice, that's fine too. It's just useful for you in any way that you want it to be useful. So we're going to kind of start rolling through these 11, and we will stop to breathe, don't worry, but as I say, this isn't how I'd normally do it because I'd want to have activities for each of them, but we don't really have that luxury. This slide talks a little bit about how the 11 principles are organized. There's this overarching principle number 11, which is assessment. It's that idea that we can't know where we're going unless we know where we're starting. And sometimes when we look at where we're starting, it isn't always as pretty as we might like it to be. But if you're looking at your climate surveys, your culture surveys, the number of referrals, all of those kind of things, you have to know where are we now so that you can say 3 years down the line, look how different it is than it used to be. So the idea of assessment is overarching. Then the first 3 principles really are kind of foundational. What is character education? What are the foundational components of it? Principles 4, 5, and 6 talk about what do schools that have embedded character education look like. And again, each of these would be branches, and I hope that will become clear as we start talking about it. And then principles 7 to 10 talk about who needs to be involved. Because as I said earlier, it can't just be the principal, it can't just be the guidance counselor. Yes? So are they designed, like I get that 11 is first,
right.
Like order?
No. You don't need to go in order because if we did that, most of us would never get to number 2. You really want to look at what's going on in your school, and really you probably want to look at where's the strength that we already have. Because it's easier to start with the strength and then build on that, and then we broaden out from there. So they are not sequential at all. And you might do them you might approach them in one way and someone else will approach them in another way. And the reality is that you really don't like clean up number 4 and then you go to number 5. It isn't like you do number 2 and then you're ready to do number 3. They're all happening all the time. So they're not sequential, and many of them have a whole lot of bleed together or overlap as well. So they're 11, and I don't even want to say that number 11 is the first one, except in many ways it is first just by the fact that you have to know where you're starting so you can measure where you're going. But then 11 comes back again and again and again, because then you're always saying, how are we doing? Have we seen some change in this area? Have we seen some change in that area? Okay? So principle number 1 talks about, it's the essence of it is the idea of core ethical values. This is not, I am not the value police here. Would you raise your hand if you already have what you would consider to be core values at your school? Something that you consider so that everybody would know and say, this is what we're about.
Okay, thank you. Increasingly, schools do have some kind of core values. Sometimes the core values include safety, and then I know it probably is a PBIS school, which I have no issue with, except I don't think safety is really a core value. But it appears in a lot of core value listings. Core values are what we say is really the guts of what we're doing. There are ethical values that would be honesty, respect, caring, all of those kind of words that are related to how we interact with one another. And then there are performance values that have to do with perseverance and determination, effort. Your school might have only one kind of these. They might have multiples. I'm not suggesting that whatever you have, you throw it out the window. I'm actually suggesting that what you have, you look at how you can make it work for you. Because what you would like would be that everybody around knows that Hartford University School really stands for this. That those core values are really the guts of your school. That those core values are the filter through which all decisions are made in your school. So if you say, and my old school, it was sharing, and this happened to us just by a stroke of luck, but sharing, showing respect, and being responsible. And so that was something that was on our folders, it was on the letterhead, it was everywhere. Everybody in our school knew that's what we were about at our school, was sharing, showing respect, and being responsible. It doesn't matter if those are the right words or not. The fact is that you have a common language that all of your staff and all of your students and all of your community know is the guts of what you believe in your school. And so that often is a place that you start from just because it helps to know. But that second item there, that idea that it needs to be more than just a list. Because a lot of schools have a list and no teacher can even list it, much less the students. And you would want everybody in your school to know, this is what we think is important in our school. Some schools have 9 of them because they do one a month. I can't remember 9. Maybe you can. I think that's a little bit challenging, but you know what? You start wherever, we all start somewhere. So if you have 9, then you use those 9 and you may come back at some point and look at regrouping those and saying, gosh, honesty and respect, I think they could really go together, and integrity, I think we could call it integrity. It doesn't matter what the words are. It just matters that everybody in your school knows about them, everybody in your community acknowledges them. This is what your school is about. And so when Margie went through that cookies book, that's the kind of words we'd be talking about as your core values. And again, sometimes the whole district has core values. And you don't, and you're really going with the district, and then you're developing within your school how it looks and sounds. It doesn't matter what the words are, you just want everybody to have. And the other thing is that if you don't have core values, you don't want this group that's sitting at the table to be the ones that say, okay, I got it, let's have these be our 5 core values and we can go from here. You want to be including staff, you want to be including parents. The broader you can spread that net as you're talking about what are our core values, the better. Because that's the way that you get buy-in, because everybody had a chance to talk about that. And it's values that are for the good of all. It isn't your values or mine. It's the greater good, what we want our students to be able to recognize and identify. Those become then what teachers are looking to incorporate. When I talk about embed and infuse, that's what they're embedding and infusing are those core values. Principle number 2 talks about there are 3 aspects that you have to have within each of your core values. The idea that character education is defined in 3 ways, as thinking, feeling, and behaving. It's really 3 aspects of learning. We can talk to them all day and help them think about it, but until they have an opportunity to practice it in their behavior, until they have an opportunity to see it and feel it, there's probably not so much likelihood that they're really going to embed it in their own lives. So we want them to have that opportunity to know, to think it, to see it, and to feel it. But it also has to be specific. These came from a middle school. I did not steal them. A custodian let me have them the last day of school last year. I took my granddaughter to school and I saw these on the wall and I'm like, oh, those are great examples. So he said, oh, just you can have them. It's the idea of, obviously their core values are respect yourself, respect others, and respect your environment. It's all about respect. But then they list, for arrival and dismissal, what does that look like? Because you and I might talk about respect and we might mean something completely different than the student does. So you have to be specific on what does that look like. Now, that will look and sound different with every grade level as well. It's not going to be the same for everybody. So it's that idea of that you need to be specific. That second item there of modeling, I just want to talk about for a minute, because if there was one thing I would say about how to embed character education in your school, it would be that word, modeling. Because kids, we say, don't worry if they don't listen to what you're saying. Worry that they watch every move you make. And don't they? I mean, they know exactly, who gets along in your staff. They know, what goes on and what the hierarchy is, even if you didn't tell them. You can talk about friendship and respect and kindness 180 days in a row. But the first day that they see Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones arguing about who signed up for the computer lab at 2:30 on Tuesday, that lesson, those words just go sailing out the window. They're watching all the time. And there are schools that would say that when they started character education, they didn't even take it. They didn't even talk about core values out with their kids. They didn't even talk about character education out with their kids. They started with the staff. And they worked as a staff to do a better job of modeling and embedding and infusing their character values. And by the time a year passed of them working as a staff, the kids got it. They had seen it. They knew exactly what it was that they were trying to demonstrate, or that they were demonstrating. Modeling is just the most important thing. And there are some who would say that the best way to teach something is to model it. And if you think about how you learn things, and if you're a golfer, if you're any kind of a sports person, if you're a knitter, you can hear about it, you can read the directions, but if you show me what it looks like, then I understand. What is that thing, that idea of teaching them to fish? But then once you're with them and doing it and modeling it for them, then they understand it. So modeling is increasingly important. The second item there, relationships. Marvin Berkowitz said the 3 R's of character education are relationships, relationships, relationships. If you have not established positive, supportive relationships with students, it doesn't matter what you're talking about or what you're saying or what you're trying to get them to learn. Those relationships are just a really important part of that. This final, the third one there, opportunities for practice. We're going to talk about moral action in just a little bit, but it's really practice that leads to commitment. It's doing it that makes a difference for most of us in terms of learning it. They say that which we hope to do with ease, we must first do with determination. Some things we just have to practice, and so we have to give them opportunities to practice. One of them, that has to do with moral action, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. One way to remember principle number 2, I always think, is the element that you see here of head, heart, and hand. Knowing, wanting, doing. And it's that idea of wanting the good, knowing the good, and doing the good. So head, heart, and hand all has to be part of it. You can't just talk about words. You have to give them opportunities to reflect and think about how that felt or how it felt to someone else. And you even saw that in that video of the circle talk of how do you think he felt, or how did that feel to you? That has to be a piece of what you do. So that's, your first branch is really that idea of core values. And what do we have that reinforces our core values? The second is, in using our core values, do we include thinking, feeling, and behaving? And so that's one of those branches. Principle number 3, now remember, these first 3 are those foundational pieces, that idea of what's it going to look like in the big picture. There's something that says, you know, keep your eyes on the road, not on the windshield wipers. You know, this is like the big piece. This is the big picture of what should your program look like. And so the third part of that, principle number 3, is the idea that your program should be comprehensive, intentional, and proactive. The first bullet about addressing all aspects of school life, what we really mean there is this just isn't what happens, like we said, in the classroom. It has to be how things happen in the hallway. It really starts with how and who you hire. Because you should be looking to include people in your staff who already recognize and themselves embrace the core values of your school. I once heard someone say that they hire for character and they train for competency. That they look for people of character in the way that they act and behave and what their history is. And they know they can, you know, with those people, they know they can bring them along whichever way they need to go. But they hire for character. This also should include your academics, but also your athletics, your extracurriculars, how your lunchroom is set up, how your after-school programs work in terms of dismissal, how students are welcomed into your school, how parents are involved in your school and welcomed, how staff interact. It's like everything that goes on. One person from a high school once talked about how that they recognized that at the end of the day, at 3 o'clock, the custodian locked all the doors. Though they talked about respect and caring all day long with their kids, at 3 o'clock you had to be out. It didn't matter if it was raining or snowing. It didn't matter if your mom got held up at work. No matter what, 3 o'clock you got to be out. And somebody said, wait a minute, that does not at all reflect what we're saying to kids is important. And so that was just something that, again, automatically happened that nobody paid much attention to. But then they came back and looked at it. You know, how do things go in athletics? Do your athletic coaches understand the core values and what you're trying to reinforce with the students, and do they act that out? Is your discipline program or your discipline policy aligned to that? This really pulls together and forces us when we say embed and embrace. And right now you're going, Elaine, we don't have time to do all this. I understand that. This, as I say it, it just sounds overwhelming because it's everywhere and everything. But please don't be discouraged by that. Just know that that's your goal. You know, I like to say that we go as far as we can see. And when we get there, we'll see farther. You know, you're not going to get all those places this year, but that's the goal, is that it's a piece and a part of everything you do in your school. And if nobody ever says that, you'll never know that that's what you're trying to do. So you want those core values reflected across every aspect and every piece of your school. Principle number 4 is probably a place that every school is already working hard at. And that's the idea of building a caring school community. And this goes along with the issue of relationships as well. It's really the heart of school culture. Some schools are stronger with how students are treated than the way staff treats one another. So sometimes that's a place for us to look as well. You know, how are we with one another? Are there bully issues in our staff group? Is there respect and responsibility demonstrated by our own staff members? So it's among and including all of those stakeholders. It isn't just about students and teachers. It's about all of them and how those all fit together. And again, it comes back to this modeling piece. I think maybe, is this how I can do this? No. Well, that wasn't the right thing. Let me get to this. This next is just kind of a break from listening to me. Can you help me, Julie, because I have got a mess here. This is Joe Beckman, and Joe Beckman is out of Minnesota. And he visits schools, but he does a lot of pieces like this. This is called Links and Chains. And I think it's an important piece that's an element of this, the kindness and caring of the caring school community.
2017, when Roberta Ursay and her family decided to take a vacation. They were going down to the southern tip of Florida, Panama Beach to be exact, where they were going to relax, unwind, and enjoy the sun. Now, a few hours into this excursion, Roberta's youngest boys, an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old, her sons, decided to go out for a quick swim in the ocean. Except they didn't return. And Roberta started to get worried. She started walking up and down the beach trying to find them amongst the crowd, and that's when she said she heard them from the ocean screaming, "Help, help, we're stuck, we're stuck." Her boys were drowning, and like any mother would, instincts kick in, and Roberta dives out into the ocean, right? Her two uncles, the boys' two uncles, they did the same thing along with a few other strangers, and unfortunately, as it happens in so many situations like this, 2 drowning kiddos turn into several drowning people in a matter of seconds. In total, between the family and the few strangers, there were 9 people who were most likely going to die that day. Now, a little ways down the beach was a woman by the name of Jessica Simmons. Now, Jessica and her husband were out for an evening stroll, enjoying an ice cream on a seemingly random night when they saw a group gathering down by the beach, desperately pointing out into the ocean. And at first, she thought it was a shark, but when her and her husband ran up, she realized that there were people who were drowning. And without hesitation, Simmons starts facilitating a human chain, desperately convincing everyone around her who was strong enough to be a part of it. And one by one, person by person, link by link by link by link, they created 80 different unique links, 80 different humans that finally got out to the people who were drowning, and each person was brought back alive. Amazing. Here's the point. When you look out at any given school, high school, middle school, there is a 100% chance you are going to see kids who are struggling, who are drowning in their fear, in their stress, in their anxiety, drowning because of a pain caused by a disability or names that they've been forever called, drowning in the shame or the confusion of the physical, emotional, or too often sexual abuse that they're having to endure. Drowning simply because they're teenagers, right? New brains, new bodies, new pressures, new choices. I mean, even the kiddo who on paper has it all together many times is drowning. And here we are, the adults, the onlookers at the beach that day. It's like when we look out, we can clearly notice that kids are struggling, but there's so many. We can feel so helpless. Which, that's the paradox, right? One person, no matter how hard they care, can't get to everyone. And yet, what we know is that everyone needs at least one person who cares. So where do we start? The answer is to create chains of human connection, sometimes up to 80 people long, so that when, not if, but when students start to struggle, when they get caught up in the riptide or the undertow of life, we can be out there to support them and to show them that there's a way back to safety. And what does that take? Number one, it takes a chain maker, a Jessica Simmons, someone who's not only going to see that there's a problem, but who's going to actively start doing something about it. And that's not an easy role, and it's not for everybody. But if you think about it, without Jessica Simmons, 9 people died that day. Maybe you're a chain maker. Maybe you're the person who's got that personality, that charisma that people just connect to, or you have that passion to start that club or organization that advocates for more respect, or maybe you see someone who's like literally drowning right in front of you right now, and even though you don't have the natural leadership ability or whatever you think it takes, maybe you start stepping up and start stepping in. Maybe you're a chain maker, but maybe you're not, right? Maybe you're not that person. Maybe you're a link. Let me explain. Maybe you're the bus driver who, when that kiddo who's never happy gets on your bus, you greet them with a good morning. Or maybe you're the shop teacher who spends a little bit of extra time with that kid who connects with you and you alone in your school. Or maybe you're a student and you see that kiddo who has nobody to sit with at lunch every single day, and you say, "Hey bro, come sit with us today." Listen, we needed 80 different people, 80 different links to get out to those drowning human beings. We need everybody. And what we know is that on any given day, there are thousands of kids who are drowning, and they have no chain, and there's nobody that's noticing and nobody that's seeing. And the consequence to this is that people start losing hope. And then they start hurting themselves, or then, even worse, they start hurting others. I mean, it's February 21st, 2018. Today, as I make this video, less than 7 days ago, 17 innocent high school kids were brutally murdered by a sick, sad, disconnected human being. And am I saying that all this kid needed was a few extra hugs and this doesn't happen? No. Obviously, it's way, way bigger than that. But you are going to have a tough time convincing me that this kid wasn't drowning for a very, very long time. And even though he had support, that chain, the human connection chain, didn't make it out. It wasn't long enough. There weren't enough links. I don't know. I mean, we may never know, but what we do know is that every kid needs a chain made up of multiple links from multiple facets from their life, whether it's teachers and parents and administrators and friends, and as Roberta Ursay will say firsthand, sometimes complete strangers. A few days after the incident, Roberta met up with many of the links that made that human chain up, that got out to her and her family. She was incredibly grateful, incredibly thankful, emotional, as you can imagine, and she told them that every one of them would be the hero in their family for the rest of their lives. Here's the truth. You may never get that thank you. You may never see the fruit of your labor. You may never have anybody come up to you and call you a hero, but you got to know that the work that you're doing, the connections you are making, the links that you are creating matters. Every chain matters. Every link matters. Because every kid matters. Thanks for watching.
His name is Joe Beckman, and if you Google him, he has tons of different pieces like that. But I think it's a real important piece, that element of chains and links and the important role that we play with all the kids. They just told me that I'm on number 5 and I have 6 more to go and I have 15 minutes. So we're going to continue to move on. I'm going to continue to move on from there. But again, just a real important message for all of us, I think, that the importance of principle number 4, caring and kindness. Principle number 5, remember I said the opportunity for kids to practice. Principle number 5 talks about providing kids with moral action, opportunities for moral action. These can be simple things, like I think of a 5th grade teacher. She had a student in her class who, unfortunately, as much as she tried to deal with issues in the classroom, would get sent up to the office. And she, saw that truck coming pretty early on. But she made it very clear to her class that anytime anybody was out of the classroom, when that person came back in, it was your job as their desk partner, as their table group, whatever, to bring them up to speed. She didn't talk about a certain child. She just said, this is important. This is, we don't move on, but with our friends with us. So that was a simple opportunity for moral action and expectation right within the classroom. It also means this idea of pieces out beyond, did I do something? Oh, outreach activities. That's, we all have the soup collections, the coat collections, all of that. I once heard people described as that the kids are really the mules that bring the soup into school. Because how many times have kids brought in cans and said, I don't know what this is for, but my mom sent it in my backpack. Because mom knows there's a food driver, a coat driver, something. So you want to create opportunities so kids they aren't just the mules. So they really have an opportunity to be involved in those outreach activities. And again, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm supposed to be using this. But it's that idea of moving from community service to service learning. So that, and that, again, that could be a whole day's conversation. But the idea that kids are involved. But these outreach activities, these in-class moral opportunities, are other opportunities for practice for kids. So moral action is principle number 5. Principle number 6 says that you can't teach about character education just sitting by itself. It has to be part of a meaningful curriculum. And so within that curriculum, you're looking for opportunities to embed your core values into the lessons. You're including social emotional skills in every class, and the idea that there's opportunities for student voice and choice. This is and also differentiation in how you deal with students with special needs. This is a long, slow process, and especially this idea of embedding social emotional learning skills. We sometimes think, when we think of character education, we think of that idea of integrity, honesty, helpfulness, let's just say, kindness. But in fact, social emotional learning skills are an important part of an effective character education program, in that this gives kids an opportunity to use those words that we talk about in terms of how they do it. And it helps them to develop these skills, especially the relationship, the social awareness piece. If you think about what the students were doing when they did those when they did their reading groups together, in their literature circles, they were really on their way very well at 4th grade to developing these kind of social emotional learning skills. So social emotional learning is part of that principle that talks about how we have to include just really good quality instruction, not just be talking about, we're not talking about kindness and caring and respect all day long. We're talking about it as part of what we're teaching all day long, though. Principle number 7 talks about fostering students' self-motivation. And this is a great quote from Marvin, and it has to do with how often we praise kids or what we give them pencils and things for. I'll let you read that. I know you're all very good at that. So, the idea that we didn't become who we are because our name was on a board, because we got a sticker, because we were acknowledged in some way. We became who we are because of a whole range of activities. And very often we kind of get stuck on the fact of how we're going to reward the kids who are doing what we'd already like them to be doing. This is something that is a slow process in schools, that idea of getting away from the extrinsic and helping learning and character education to be intrinsic. It's another one where you can't just throw it out the window without everybody saying, oh my gosh, we all start somewhere. I used to have a hats off program where we gave out coupons if you got a ticket if you were doing well. We called their name out, we did all kinds of things until we discovered that this was a whole remuneration system that we didn't plan on, because you could buy an Oreo cookie for 2 hats off coupons. Or you could, all kinds of things were going on. Kids also understood that if they saved up their hats off coupons for a full semester and then put them in the hat, they significantly increased the odds of getting chosen. So, I don't stand in judgment of anybody doing any of that, because I was in charge of doing a whole lot of that until we recognized, and then you say, whoops, that's not going the way you want it to do. It's like when your roadway system, you make a mistake, it doesn't say turn around stupid, it says, recalibrate. So we recalibrated because we realized we were making some mistakes. And we all make mistakes along the way. But again, this is another element to consider, that idea of, are you using just extrinsic or are you increasing your intrinsic motivation? And the other element of this, of the extrinsic, intrinsic, has to do with how your discipline policies and procedures echo your core values. This is all part of the student motivation element of number 7. And so these are just questions to consider. Do your school's behavior and discipline practices echo or reflect what you say you value in your school? Or is that something that stands completely apart from your core values? So again, it all comes down to those core values and being the filter for which all of this is under consideration. Principle number 8, now we're that cluster there, numbers 4 to 7, were about what do schools look like, remember, that have incorporated effective character education. Now 8, 9, and 10 are going to talk about who should be involved in it. So now we've moved to that last group of who should be involved in it. Principle number 8 says the entire school staff has to be part of it, and you all already know that, so I'm not going to beleaguer that, but that idea that it has to be, everyone has to have a piece of the action. And we all have some naysayers in the group. So you're looking for opportunities. If it's Mr. Smith who's the naysayer in 4th grade, you're just looking like crazy for something that Mr. Smith is doing that is really helping his kids develop character education. And you're really recognizing that and saying, gosh, that's wonderful what you're doing. You're finding ways to, again, highlight what is happening that's supporting what your effort is. Ways to build leverage by the way that you incorporate those people in. Because all of us want, all these people want their kids to be successful and they want their students to be making good choices. So how can we help bring them into the fold? Because everybody has to be part of it. If it's just a little cluster, the wheel never gets rolling. You need to have everybody on board. Principle number 9 says not only does it have to be everybody, but you need strong moral leadership in this effort. That isn't just the principal. That just doesn't mean we need to have the principal on board or we need to have the superintendent on board. It means we have to have a lot of people who have opportunities to be leaders. And you saw some of that even with student leaders in those circle talks, in your school meetings, in your classroom meetings. You're looking so that everybody has leadership opportunities, as well as having strong leadership with a committee or somebody that really helps to move things along. You can't just think everybody together is going to be moving in a direction. You do need a leadership team, but you need to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be part of that leadership team. Principle number 10 says that you also need to have your families and community members involved. And so from the very beginning, if you're going back and looking again at your core values, reach out to those parents. I know South Milwaukee, they did it through parent-teacher conferences. And when parents came in for parent-teacher conferences, they had an opportunity to go to a keyboard and identify what they thought were important core values in their district. And so everybody had a voice in that. And so from the very beginning, parents recognized they weren't getting left out. They were part of it as well. That's an important element of this, is that parents and teachers and everyone is involved. We're going to pass over Phil Brown, who does a nice job of talking about assessment, but that's okay. We'll listen to him another night. This is principle number 11 then, and it lists some of the information that you'll want to consider, and some of it you already have. You don't even think of it necessarily as character-related information. But what are your attendance rates? What are your referrals and discipline numbers looking like? How about school climate studies? If you haven't done anything like that, you want to do school climate, or even better yet, school culture studies that look a little deeply at how do people perceive what's going on in your school. And the first time you do them, like I said, they aren't really very pretty usually. So but you need a place to start. And so you're looking for growth and improvement over the years. But so as you begin all of these, you want to include some element of how can we assess it. Because if we can't assess it or measure it, then it's hard for us to say that things have really gotten better. In general, an effective character education program is the idea of the well-planned and overt curriculum, and then everyday modeling habits and routines. So it's that you incorporate it into your classroom, but more that it goes on every day no matter where you are in your school. This is just another little blurb for promising practices. A reminder that the promising practice applications are due February 1st. And then finally, in closing, I wonder what students make a difference, Peppermint Patty. They make a difference. And so thank you for the difference that all of you make in that last very quick little introduction. So I know it's a lot, but hopefully it'll be helpful in some way for you as you go through the rest of LACCs. So thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. So as some of you heard or noticed when we came in, that we are having an active threat drill tonight. It's going to be going on in a few minutes. So we're going to take our break right now. So
I'm understanding that safety drills in schools have turned into a different mode than when I last was there, and that is get out as fast in any way as you can. Is that going on in schools these days? Or is it hide and...
Both.
Oh.
Whatever you feel you need to do.
Both. How do kids know what to do then?
Depends on how close the gunfire is.
What?
Depends on how close the sound of the gunfire is.
Man. Okay, and so we don't want character ed programs in schools, is that right? Oh, I don't mean to be sarcastic, so. Anyway, it's a different time, and it's very sorrowful to me that we have to teach our little children and our kids that are just moving into their adult changes, and then young adults, how to protect themselves. What a hard time for our youth. Can you imagine? And so, because I'm a grandma with college age and a lot of high schoolers now, I asked them, how is it going to school? And they said, are you kidding? We're all scared. And, you know, they come from families that are pretty calm, cool, and collected. They got their feet on the ground. So I can only imagine the added stress that our youth have these days. You know, little kids thinking there's a boogeyman coming, and middle school kids thinking that, you know, any door slamming could be a gun. Not that middle schoolers are emotionally up and down, but they are. And high schoolers, that's young adults. You know, they're working and they got to worry about being hurt and about who's going to save me. Those are some tremendous stresses. And I think somehow in our character ed programs, we've got to develop some kind of activities, events, and lessons so that kids don't come to school so afraid they can't learn. So good luck on that. And when you start developing your lessons, remember that that's a promising practice. That's a state school of character, and they need to be published. Why shouldn't you publish them for everyone else to profit from your work? So tonight, before I introduce our panel, I would just like to say that Character Ed in Laccs is not just about applying for a Promising Practice Award or a state or a national school of character award. It's far better than that. However, isn't it nice when you get acknowledged for the things that you are doing? And I think teachers are always way too humble. They don't want to stand and be counted about this was a good thing and let's share it with our colleagues in the state or our colleagues throughout the country. And so we really do want all of you to take to heart tonight promising practices, state schools of character, national schools of character, national promising practices. This is very important work. If we share our ideas about math and reading and science, shouldn't we be sharing about what we're doing for character? That's equally as important in an era when it seems to be out of vogue to talk about what's important about ethical and performance behaviors. So tonight we brought in some people that are very well connected with this, and they do not have a corner on the market for all the kinds of awards that have been given out in the state or in the nation. But they are people who have been to Laccs and are currently working in schools that have won some awards. And I think we all deserve to be acknowledged for some awards in our work, just like some of you come from state schools of character and promising practices schools. And also we've asked Elaine to stay and sit on the panel for the questions and answer time, because she is very well connected with state schools of character, national schools of character and promising practices. Maybe you would call her the director of them in the state of Wisconsin. Did I just give that away and I shouldn't have?
I think you might have, yeah, but that's okay. Coordinator, not director.
Oh, pardon me. She's just the coordinator, just that. So tonight it's my pleasure to introduce two people who have attended Laccs in the past and are currently working, as I said before, in sites that have won some acknowledgments for their work. First of all, I'd like to introduce Jason, and say your last name for us, please.
Termott.
And he is the assistant principal in the school district, in the high school in the school district of South Milwaukee. South Milwaukee also is a national district of character. So we welcome you, and he brings with him, of course, the secondary experience. Then I'd like to introduce Dr. Dana Croad, who has been in Laccs also and is currently working at Rockfield, right? Mm-hmm. Rockfield Elementary School in Germantown. And so we've given them some food for thought on how to share their experiences as they applied for their awards. So they're each going to take some time and share their experiences. And then at the end, we're going to ask two more questions of them both and from Elaine, and then we'll have questions and answers. And our timekeeper is Julie. Okay. Who would like to go first? I picked Dana.
Sure. You know what? I'll go first too, because the school that I'm at is a absolutely fantastic school. I had come to the school. I'm in my 4th year now, but prior to arriving at the school, I had completed the Laccs program, and I went to Rockfield as a principal there, and was immediately impressed with all of the naturally embedded opportunities for students around character education. It definitely wasn't something that was called character ed. It still isn't called character ed. But it was very apparent to me the way that the teachers cared about the kids, the way that the families cared about the school, and then the way that the kids cared about each other and everything that they did day to day. So it was really easy for me after coming from that Laccs experience and hearing all the things that you hear and talking with such great people and just kind of having my eyes opened up to looking for those things, or maybe not even looking for those things, but being aware of it. I instantly noticed some great opportunities. And when I was at Laccs, I was hearing about promising practices, and I didn't quite know what to do with it. But like I said, once I got to Rockfield, there was many things. So we applied for a Promising Practice Award that first year because I just knew it was right. We had a PBIS committee, so I think that's important to say too, because it was where does PBIS fit in with character ed? Mm-hmm. And our committee got together in the summer and we talked about what our theme was going to be. And our theme was the 7 habits of happy kids. And so we did that. So we as a team decided that we were going to focus on the 7 happy kids. And we did that. And every month we broke it apart. We had assemblies and we had themes that fit into each habit. And we worked together that way. And we started talking more about that than the whole routines and expectations of PBIS. So that is definitely important and it's still a part of our school. But some of those rewards, kind of going to those extrinsic rewards, they started to lose focus. And we were focusing on what does it take to just to be a student with some healthy habits. And so the Promising Practice Award that we received was based off, we had a 3rd grade teacher who said, I've got this book and I read it to my class and I have some posters and we talk about it. We determined as a team that every class needed to have this book. We hit up our PTA and our PTA bought a book for every class for in the classroom and then one to send home. We had a few questions based on the level of the kids. For every month, the families would read what that chapter was about, and then as a family, they would reflect on how they are using that habit in the home and how that might look within their own life, and then the students would bring that back to school. We did not make it mandatory. If a kid didn't bring it back, it was okay, but we just wanted we wanted to give that opportunity for them to read it as well as in the classroom to read it. And then we would have students come up at every assembly, and we had a handful of students come up and share how they saw themselves using that habit at school. So that was our first step into Promising Practice, and that was the first exposure for Rockfield into the Promising Practice world. Nobody had attended Laccs aside from me. They didn't know anything about it, but because we won that Promising Practice Award, we actually were also given the opportunity to send people to the Character Ed Conference, and we also were at the dinner. So that opened the doors for more staff to understand what this is all about. So we had 4 staff members who came to the dinner. They got to hear about other people who won State School of Character Awards, other Promising Practices Awards. It was a huge aha moment for the staff at our school that came to this to say, we do that. We do that. You know, it just, because we take so much of it for granted. So it was an opportunity for them to really reflect too and be excited for other schools that are doing great things, but then also to become a little bit more aware of things that they've done and then also come back and do more things. So then the second year, there was 2 staff members who attended Laccs, and actually it took another year, so that was 2 years. But so we sent people to the Character Ed Conference for 2 years in a row, and then we did sent 2 teachers to the Laccs Conference last year, and immediately they came to me and said, we've got to do this Promising Practice Award again. And they came together and they said, we have so many great things, but what do we think is worthy of a promising practice? So now this was on them, and they came saying, so it's, you know, you guys being there and just going through it and saying, digging deep and saying, we've got great things at our school, but what's one thing that we think would be worthy of sharing out? And so our second Promising Practice Award was game leaders. And so it's having 4th and 5th graders who want to be a part of it, helping littler kids find things to do on the playground, have an older student to kind of look up to and to guide them. And it's not just going out on the playground and having a vest on. There's a lot of preparation for this. Our school counselor had met with the students who were excited about it in the summer, and there was a small little application process. They had to want to do it, and they had to participate in a week-long, half-day sessions of collaboration, team building, and game leader practice. and then they continue to do it throughout the school year. So it's just a couple days a week that they are responsible to go out and help lead games and facilitate things with younger students. And the school counselor was an integral part of that. And so she just felt that that would be worthy of sharing out. So she really looked at that Promising Practice Award as a chance to share with others. Something that, it wasn't so much about that award, it was about how do I pass this on? And so that was kind of our journey. When it came time to celebrate with the staff, we kind of put it out there, but again, it's something that we do at our school, that it wasn't something that we had to have a huge celebration for, because I also think that's part of character ed is it's great to be recognized for what you do, and I think it was cool. We shared it out with the staff and announced it to the kids kind of briefly, but it's really about who we are and what we do, and I was just kind of getting better and growing and finding other ways. And this year we have 2 more staff members who are here, and see what ideas we have to apply for a Promising Practice Award. Or not, just kind of take in what we're doing right now and celebrate it within our school. And we are looking to apply for the State School of Character, but it's a big undertaking, so we're at that kind of entry phase of where do we begin, how do we do it, and we'll be working with Elaine on that.
And if I could just interject, part of when we do promising practices, it has to be connected to one or more of these 11 principles. You see in the first one that they had involvement of all the staff, all the students across the whole school. It continued throughout the whole year. It wasn't a single event. It engaged the parents as well because they had the take-home pieces. So, you had already multiple of these 11 principles included in that. In the second one, you had shared leadership because now you had students involved as leaders on the playground. There was also a matter thereof that it went on through the whole year and had been going on beyond the year. So just kind of an example of how those linked into some of the things that we talked about earlier tonight. We could go on about those, but those just, right off the top of my head, I have to point out that.
So if I could just add as well, speaking from the mother and the grandmother point of view or the administrative leader point of view, isn't this something that all children would be kind of neat at? Wouldn't you love your children or grandchildren to have had either one of those experiences? I think I would just burst my buttons, as it were, if one of my grandchildren now got to be a play leader. I mean, wow, what an accomplishment for a child. That said, there are many other promising practices that are part of your climate and your culture that would probably burst the buttons off of the mother and the grandmother or the daddy and the grandfather. I just had to put in that home component. And lastly, I remember with Dana's first promising practice, what really struck me was a lot of schools have a program where we're working on some kinds of things, like how many drops in the bucket, that kind of thing. And to go beyond and to incorporate the parents in doing it with the book and take-homes, that's what took something common and made it really unique and workable, I think. Take it away, Jason.
Okay. So I'm Jason Termott, I'm Associate Principal at South Milwaukee High School. I'm in my 14th year at South Milwaukee, 10 of those years as an Associate Principal. Learned a lot in my 10 years doing this. Our journey really started in 2011 when our superintendent and a smaller group of administrators attended Laccs. I was able to attend in 2012 with a group of teachers and some more administration. At this point, we have another group in this year that will have every administrator in our district will have been Laccs trained, which is a great thing because then it puts us all pretty much on the same page when we're trying to do this stuff. As far as our journey, it really started that year after the superintendent went through and the year that I was currently going through, and we were talking about how do we get a character ed program going in our district. It turned into our first and probably, I would say probably our proudest Promising Practices Award. We do have 5, 3 of them at district-wide and 2 of them particularly at elementary schools in our district. Doesn't mean we haven't applied for others, because I have personally applied for one, but we didn't get it. That's okay. That happens.
No hard feelings.
No, not at all. Got to work harder. Back in 2012 is actually how we launched our character education in South Milwaukee that got us a Promising Practice Award, and she had mentioned it a little bit before. And we really included the entire community when it came to finding our 5 traits. We call it the SM Way. I know this isn't very big. I could have brought a bigger one. But this is also our postcard that says good news on it for the high school, so that when I have something happening in the classroom that's really good, I can just do this, and then our SM Way is on the fridge at home. So kind of serves both purposes. But the SM Way is what we live by. It was put together by, you know, the staff, the students, and the community. It was mentioned how we did it through the staff voting on character traits. We started with the, I don't know what is, like 68 or 72 or something. We got it down to 50. From there, we opened the door to the parents at parent-teacher conferences. It says here that we had 7,566 votes. We don't have that many parents, so they must have voted for multiple traits, okay, because we're not that big of a district. But it was able to get us down to where our small team was be able to put it down to respect, kindness, responsibility, honesty, and perseverance. And those are the 5 words that are the SM Way. And we talk about the SM Way in every building, every day, as much as we can. We have gone so far from that particular start, we've gone so far as to adding it into disciplinary actions. You know, when a log entry comes in, a disciplinary entry, which trait did they break, so that I can have a better conversation with them. We have it in our matrices at the elementary levels on how to do things appropriately. It's just part of, there's one of these in a very large poster in every single classroom. And I was telling Julie before that at the high school level, it's a little harder to really do a character trait like training, you know, sit down and talk about a definition and so forth, as opposed to at the elementary, middle school level. It's a lot easier. At the high school, I just ask every teacher that every day in every class, you should be able to talk about one of those traits very easily. Someone's struggling with a homework, it's perseverance. You know, being kind to someone else instead of, you know, picking on them or something like that. So that's kind of how we've approached it. But that was our whole it just launched our, what are we in, 8 years now, to where we have gone and we've gotten a couple others. The district got one called Students Give Back, just how much we've done for the community and for other places around us. We have our Rawson Elementary Buddies for Character. It was really the 5th graders working with the kindergartners and reading books with them and teaching them how to have proper character traits and so forth. That one was really focused around anytime we had a half day, our attendance was awful. I'm sure all of us probably feel that way. We no longer have half days because of that. But they focused on those days because we wanted those kids to be in school more. So we set it up on those days, and they had great results, and were able to teach the kids some things there. We had a bucket filling trait where they would just, whenever they were caught doing one of the 5 traits, there was a bucket in the office, and they were able to put something in there, and they tried to see how many of these things, you know, they could fill this bucket with before, and then had a big celebration. And then our most recent one is Stuff the Bus, which we continue to do every year. Everybody knows what Stuff the Bus is, but we have 4 elementaries, a middle school, and a high school. All schools are involved. The elementaries really go crazy, which is awesome. At the high school level, it's interesting. We always have one particular organization that just takes it and runs with it, and then they get other organizations that jump on top and want to help out and and fill that bus. And the beauty of that one is it stays in South Milwaukee. Bless you.
So sorry. That was not part of the emergency drill. I am so sorry. I forgot I had that on. I apologize.
No problem. So it stays in South Milwaukee, goes to our human concerns, and and our parents, our students are the one who receives the help from Stuff the Bus. So it's a nice community event that helps everybody out. I would also mention on the other end, we are fortunate to be a school, a district of character for all of the things that we do. It's kind of interesting when she was going through the 11 principles. For coming today, I had printed out the 11 principles, and I was just taking notes on all the things that we had done. So there's a lot, there's just so much, and before we had a character ed program, we did it, but we didn't highlight it, we didn't show it off, we didn't collect it, we didn't compile all that we did. So by putting a program in place, it helped us just kind of organize. And now Stuff the Bus is run by someone from an elementary school, but all the districts are on board. When this elementary wants to do something, everybody's on board. At the high school, we do this huge Veterans Day assembly. The elementary kids get involved. So it's a huge thing. Pink Day for breast cancer. All the schools get involved. So it's not just one here, one there. It really has just kind of organized us as a whole. So, we're fortunate enough to win the District of Character, and hopefully we can keep some of that stuff rolling as we move along.
I might just add a couple of things, because I know about Stuff the Bus. A lot of schools do many civic kinds of things, and isn't that wonderful? And I always want schools to do civic things. I want them to collect food and coats and mittens and all those kinds of things. But what's so different about Stuff the Bus is that the kids were really involved. And then, not only when they stuffed the bus, there were kids from every school there doing the work and talking together about it, kind of a K-12 approach, which really caught the eye of so many people, because it's easy to do, kind of easy, I don't mean to be glib, but it's easy to do a food drive because we know how to do that. I think before we graduate from college, we kind of know how to do a food drive, but connecting kid to kid, level to level, we don't know to do that. We don't know how to do that. And the second thing is that how do we connect that with the curriculum? Not just a civic project, though it's wonderful and worthy, but how do we deepen it in the curriculum, which South Milwaukee has done? And then I'd also like to say that South Milwaukee has gotten so far into character ed that they co-sponsor the state conference here. They were the driving force of, along with Alverno, to own it here when it moved from Jefferson. So he's very humbly talking about their accomplishments, but they have been leaders in the character ed movement throughout southeastern Wisconsin and the state. So good stuff. And now I'm going to just take on a little bit of Brown Deer Middle High School, because I know that Mark, who is home with the flu, would have eventually gotten to talk about one of the things that Brown Deer did that is noteworthy, but I honestly don't recall if it was a promising practice or national promising practice. And that was, do you remember the Sherman event that happened a couple of years ago where there was some rioting in the street and some real scary moments for residents everywhere? And when the students got back to Brown Deer Middle High School, they got together, because the students write the lesson plans for character ed there. And that team got together and talked about absolutely everyone in their school was touched by Sherman Park in one way or another. And so the student team made up a group of lessons, 5 lessons for a week, as I recall. And that way, every kid in the school, in their classroom, during their character ed lesson, had a chance to discuss what the heck happened to them at Sherman Park. Isn't that just a pure gift to our adolescents who are trying to maneuver their way through life? And they're at the adult age, and this happened, and how do you debrief? How do you share your experience with others? I thought that was sheer genius, and so did others at the state and national level. And I know Mark could have really done a much better job of talking about it. Can you add anything more from Brown Deer that I glossed over? Okay, if you do, please. Okay, I'm sorry. Anything I've kind of glossed over for your awards?
Well, and they are a state and national school of character as well, the middle school, high school, in addition to the promising practices.
Yeah, so we have the state and national school of character. We have a national promising practice for the construction program that we won this year as well. And I think that was actually our first promising practice. I don't know if we had any others. So,
So Mark would have really done a much better job of presenting Brown Deer Middle and High School. Here's the saving grace. When it's our field trip day, we will be spending time as a group over at Brown Deer, and you'll hear firsthand.
it's going to be a party.
Hey, I'm in.
And you're also visiting Edgewood? And you're also visiting Edgewood?
Yes. We also have other schools that have been state schools of character and one other promising practices. And the reason that poor Meg didn't get hit this time to come up and speak, thank you, Meg, we're going to her school on our field trip day. So you will be able to all of us see K-12. We'll get to a middle high school and we'll get to an elementary school and see what state schools of character look like and feel like. And that'll be a great day. And so poor Meg's going to have to work double hard that day, but thank you.
And also, I believe that Edgewood, they've already had promising practices. They're already a state school of character. But when they made it as state school of character, we moved them on to national. And that year they did not have the score for national, and they're going back again this year. And in the midst of well, you're going to win it, Meg. But so that does happen. But I would say the same thing of, I wouldn't limit it to that because that does sometimes happen because South Milwaukee initially was a state district of character, and the first time through did not make it for national as well. And so then they went back and tweaked and reworked not only reworked their application, but enhanced their program, and then the second try through made it for a national district of character. So that, that is not unheard of here at all. That's kind of part of the system and how it works.
So lest we sound like we think every school has to go out and get awards, that's not our intention. And there are so many good things in your schools that are going on. So my question then is to the panel, how did you ever narrow it down to what you applied for? How did you figure out you wanted to do what you did for your promising practice?
Well, for me at our school, it was something that really stood out, and then it hit multiple principles. I think that's, and it was, the 7 Habits was pretty obvious because there were so many people involved, and that one just kind of came naturally. The second one that we had applied for and won was for that, the game leaders, and that was something where our LACIS, team had gone and dug deep and said, what do we feel would fit within these principles and within the application process, and what do we think is worthy of that and worthy of sharing? And so it was something that they brought forward on their end. But again, it was something that they felt was above and beyond what you might expect to see in an elementary school, and something worth sharing. We looked at it as that and celebrating.
I would say, just kind of talking about the Step the Bus one, we have a character district team that meets once a month to talk about how things are going, plan, do things like that. And I would like to say that we all said, hey, let's apply for it on this one, but we kind of left it up to the individual schools that, like this particular Ms. Fox, who's kind of the one who runs that she really wanted to apply for it, worked with Mr. Jacobs at the time, who was kind of running our character education program. So it wasn't really a unanimous decision, let's apply for this. It was, I feel this qualifies, and it's something that we need to like you said, share. So the other ones, the district ones, obviously we decided as a team we probably need to apply for this. But the 3 individual ones were more just, they felt it was something that they thought they could to show off and be recognized for.
So there's no one way. And that's pretty neat.
And we also talk about extrinsic, intrinsic, and yet we're talking about winning awards. I can't not acknowledge that. But the point of it is more that you get, it's what leverage you can build within your own school community and within your staff from the acknowledgement that comes from this. It really isn't the award, it's the idea of what growth can come from that. Meg?
Can I just add that I think going through the process, some of it is the criteria too. The process of thinking about criteria when you're applying for something elevates your practice, because there's there's usually an element of it that you leave out. Maybe that's measurement, or maybe it's how could families know about this? And ultimately, that makes your programming better. But if you weren't thinking about those criteria, they wouldn't be as good.
Right.
Absolutely. I think another piece of it, though, is that it has to be something that is part of your culture. You can't just choose to do something and then the next year hope you get to win a Promising Practices
Right.
Award and then it goes away.
Right.
The Stuff the Bus thing is, we've been doing it for years, and it's just ingrained in who we are and what we do. So I think that's the biggest piece is, anything that I think because I'm kind of rolling through my head, what could we potentially apply for? It's gotta be something that we just do, every year. And it's not because we want the award, it's
Right.
just because it's good for our community.
Right. And from that, remember, you get to those scholarships. So then not only is it that you are acknowledged and so build some leverage with that, but you also get more opportunities to train other teachers and bring more people to the conference. So it's really a growth opportunity. In the creation of it, as Meg said, it's a growth opportunity as well as at the end of the run, hopefully, there's growth for your whole staff.
So my next question then would be, and Meg, you're on the panel now, what advice do you have for anyone in any school to do an application for Promising Practice or State or National School of Character? Down-home advice.
Well, I think for the Promising Practice Award, I think just don't overthink it. Like what you said, if it's a part of your culture and you're here for a reason, and just take some time to just reflect, talk to a couple like-minded people and say, what do we've got going on right now? Just kind of be aware and go for it, because whether you may not get it that first time, but again, it's that growth opportunity, and as Meg said, it's going to make you stronger in your practice. So, and maybe you'll be stronger in that area, or you might kind of learn from that and then move on to something else and think about, okay, well, we've got this over here, and this is something that we can incorporate, and how can we add to it and make it better, and then apply for that the following year. So either way, just look at it as that growth opportunity, and I just wouldn't overthink it. It's not the Promising Practice Award it's some time. It's a little bit of a commitment, but it's definitely not too big of a commitment that you wouldn't be able to take on today.
Absolutely, and all of you are doing something in your building right now that you could be recognized for. It really is that, I don't want to say simple, but it is that simple. I would say when it came to the state and National District of Character, it's interesting, I was reading through our feedback from the people that came to talk to us. And we know we didn't get it the first time, and it was the process that opened our eyes quite a bit. Our district team, we talked about each principal, and we put in what we were for our examples for how we were applying, and you really find that, I remember vividly that I think the fact that we were kind of doing stuff here, doing stuff here, doing stuff here, we weren't unified all on the same page. That was one of our reasons the first time around. That process brings you together more, and like Meg said, it opens your eyes to what you are doing, but then how you can do it better, and just kind of molds it all kind of into place for you.
Meg?
I'll save my
So, Elaine, I thought I caught you wanting to add something, and now never mind, huh?
That sneeze knocked it out of me, I don't know.
Okay. Sorry. What were or are the school-wide benefits that you experienced when you found out you won the honor of a Promising Practice or state or national kind of award? What are the benefits in your mind?
Well, I see it as that opportunity, as I mentioned, that it created an awareness of character education. It created an opportunity for staff to attend the conference, the dinner, learn more about it, and just come together. Our PBIS committee that came together this summer, even though it was absolutely incredible a few summers ago and we wanted to go into the habits and character ed, it's almost night and day. I mean, the whole focus was on that. What are we doing? And there's a team, a small group that got together prior to our big group and came up with a value systems that they want. And we've got a whole plan this year, and we just different subcommittees. I mean, just so much growth, I would say, as a staff that came out of it, and it's just going to continue to grow. And so it's exciting to see that level of commitment and interest in it, just that happened somewhat organically, and it did stem from that awareness and that opportunity.
Personally, it got me a free trip to DC to receive the award, which was pretty nice. So we had a small team that went, and being part of the team, I was asked to go. So that was a very neat experience, and getting to and seeing Houston Craft speak and some of the other powerful people that are at those larger conferences like that. But I think growth is definitely a major piece of that. What it's done for us, though, this year, we received the award roughly this time last year, but we've had to really kind of reassess where we're at, because it gets harder, I think, as you go along, and we've kind of. And we've had people move in and move out, so we've got different factors in there. But I think this year we've really taken a step back, and we're like, okay, well, we've come this far. What else do we need to do? And so it's kind of put a new perspective on things. And I know at the high school where I lead my teams, we're really doing some different things that we haven't done in the past. The other schools are kind of following along. District jumped in. So it just kind of gave us an opportunity to reevaluate where we're at.
And could you just, I didn't,
No.
I was going to ask you to elaborate a little bit on parent feedback after you won some awards. I'm just curious if you got some from parents.
I know we got a few. That's the hard part is we do have a parent team that our superintendent meets with regularly, and obviously they were very pleased and appreciative of it. I think we hear more of it like some social media from parents. We do hear from people at sporting events or at parent-teacher conferences, just through conversation. I think they're appreciative of what we're doing, but I don't necessarily recall any specific comments from parents or the community. I know the mayor in his blog was all over it and stuff like that. But
good.
The mayor has really bought into what we're doing, and we work together with a lot of things. A small community, so we can do that.
I'm happy to hear you say that, because I would say the same thing as far as the parents go. Social media, posting something, Facebook, it got shared, people are excited. We hung the banner. We have one of our flags up. We haven't gotten our second one up yet because that's a whole other process to get it hung. But, having a couple parents say to me, what is that promising practice about? Tell me more. So I think that's just, again, that opportunity. And then, as I was just talking with a couple of the colleagues earlier, when it comes to parents, the parents are so invested in the school, and to me that speaks volumes. It's not about the award, it's about how their kids feel, how they feel coming into the school, being a part of the school, and that's all about that culture. And to me, that it's more than just that award, kind of going to that. It's not so much about the award, it's what does this award do? It helps you grow, it helps you learn, it helps kind of think more creatively, gives opportunities, just be better is what I think it is.
Well, and I was going to say, having gotten the quick indoctrination of the 11 principles, you have the sense of what kind of things might be what we're looking for, that just within your team that is here tonight to just kick around ideas about what could we do. And then you can take it to the broader staff if you choose to, but you have the core here that could go ahead and do a promising practice right now. The deadline is February 1st, but you can submit them tomorrow. You can submit them next week. You don't have to wait till February. It's open and you can do it any time.
You can also apply to national for promising practices, but you have to pay $100 to apply to national. And I always say, and there you just get a certificate that says congratulations. At the state level, you get those scholarships. So there's a lot more benefit, I think, from the state level of doing it. So just be talking among your group, and that's probably the best starting off point of all.
So I'm just going to put in a senior citizens little take. You know, senior citizens have a pretty strong voter turnout, and they can make and break an awful lot of our referendums, can't they? And so I would just say that this is something that a senior citizen would stand up and say, yep, they're doing what they're supposed to do, they're creating good citizens. Just a thought. Now, enough from my direction. I would really like to have an open mic asking these people who have experienced it, ask them your questions about the process, about what's on your mind. Maybe you have an idea and they could react to it. So.
Hi, good evening. Alicia Johnson, Brown Deer Middle High School. I just have a question mainly about the process. So I thank you for sharing your experiences first and foremost. So we hear a lot about the positive, the pretty side, right? But we know that there's some challenges. And we talk about research, and research shows or says that it takes about 3 to 5 years for changes to really, take root and to be measured. Can you talk about some of those challenges you all had before you got to where you are now?
That's a really good point, because there is that measurement piece, and that kind of would stump us because it's not a quantitative measurement that we could use. I mean, we figured it out, like for our 7 habits, we looked at how many parents actually turned it in. So how many students came back with a reflection log out of how many did we send? I mean, we had to look at that because that was a quantitative measure, but it wasn't this 3-year process of doing it. It was, this is incredible, this is what's happening, we're engaging everybody, we're tapping into all these different principles, and we have ways to know that it's working. And we also looked at the conversations that kids are having, or the language that they're using. Are they, using the words that we're kind of teaching them and putting out there? And but it wasn't very quantitative, and so we really looked at that qualitative piece.
I think Jason raised a good point that, that it gets harder as you go deeper. Mm-hmm. At the beginning you say, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to do this? But then there's some momentum, and everybody's really engaged, and we're moving forth, and we're seeing changes in our school, and things are kind of rocking and rolling. And then, you can't do the same thing every year because kids are like, this again. Oh yeah, here we go. I mean, you're always having to reinvent and really enhance what you're doing or change it. Because over the course of years, even if you're a state school of character, if you're a national school of character, if it still looks the same, and that's why technically they would say you should come back every 5 years, because you can't still be doing just the same things 5 years from now and have it be a live, really growing, nurturing program.
What I would say, a few of the challenges, it's different. It's so different at the elementary level and middle level than it is at the high school level. So I see the high school level, because that's where I am at. When we first started, we were doing one character trait every 2 months, and we would focus on that character trait. And that was fine and dandy for the first year, second year. But then it was like, okay, what are we going to do again? So a year or two in, that kind of went away at our level. And it's harder, again, at the high school level I know at Brown Deer you guys use the advisories, and the kids write the curriculum and you get in there. We've struggled getting that piece in. We do have an advisory. We've really struggled getting that piece in. And that's why I focus on the teachers just using the words throughout, talking about it. There's so much going on with ACP coming in and all that other stuff that we have to do, that it's hard to just take even 20 minutes sometimes to do a specific curriculum around the character traits. So we finally decided this year we had to do something different, and we just picked kindness. We figured if we could focus this year on kindness at the high school, that we would still hit the other 4, and we could really kind of ramp up our game. Well, then the district team jumped on, so the entire district is doing it. We've changed our whole look at how we do things. We're using Houston Craft's Character Strong. He's got the Character Dares. We're going to go do some training on Character Strong. We're looking at buying the curriculum there. So we've just kind of really done a whole change of where we were at, trying to do things internally, trying to get some help because there's more and more character ed curriculum out there these days. So it really is hard after, when you're 8 years in to have that momentum going.
Can I also add that researchers on this call it the implementation dip. It's like it's a very real thing, and it becomes, some programs become part of the wallpaper, so to speak, and it gets ho-hum, And so how do you read implementation dips, and how do you decide as a whole unit how to pull yourself out? Or if you see it coming, what can you do to ramp it up? So what you're going through is what human nature and organizations go through. It's right out there, implementation dip. How are you going to pull yourself up? Sometimes implementation dips should be thought of way up front. If you can equate it to any curriculum you have, the same thing happens. After a while, it's just what you do and how you do it, and after a while, it kind of flattens out. So, am I getting the signal that our time is up?
We gotta wrap it up.
Doesn't get clearer, does it? So, with that, I would just like to say we're getting, two things. Thank you and thank you and thank you. You made tonight very, very concrete, very real. Thanks. A lot. And that does mean you'll come back next year, right?
Sure.
Okay, then. Now we got that settled. Also, at the end of November, what is it, the 21st or something? When do we get together? The actual
November 29th.
Oh, that's the date. I had the wrong one. Anyway, just know that we have a real packed day, and what we're going to do, rather than spending time at the end of a long day trying to give you the particulars and the times and the details, we're going to send it out as an email so you'll know that we will have our field trip day. Second, I would also like to say that one of the things we want to put in your third eye is that the directors of Laccs are going to be visiting your school, and it'll be after the holidays. So if you could start thinking and approaching your either administrators if they're not here, or your character ed teams, when would it work for us to come out and pay a visit? Could last about an hour, and you don't have to get a decision today, but just start approaching it. I don't want it to be one of those harsh things that you've never heard of, but we will come, and that'll be after the holidays. With that, I want to thank everybody. I think we have a reflection.
We do, but before we do that, I just want to make a totally shameless plug. You heard Jason mention Houston Craft a couple of times, and I know some of you were at our conference last summer, and so you had the opportunity to engage with Houston Craft. But for the rest of you that don't know who we're talking about, Houston will be back again. See, I think our conference rivals national. I'm just going to put that out there. But Houston will be back next summer. He's going to do a pre-conference workshop. So the day before our conference, he will be our pre-conference presenter. So I'm just saying, I know, right? I know. So anyway, so that's our pre-conference. And Joe Beckman, who you saw on video today that Elaine shared, he is going to be our keynote at the conference as well. So, and we also have a wonderful lunch keynote speaker that I'm just not even going to tease them with, because you'll just have to show up and find out who she is. But I just wanted to put in a shameless plug, because a lot of what you're hearing and seeing, and we get so much from, other people, and I think Joe Beckman is one, and Houston is another, and so be planning on the conference in June, or pre-conference, or both.
And you're going to do the reflection? Tell us what next step?
I thought you were doing the reflection.
Am I doing it? I don't have my...
I don't know, I don't remember. Julie's doing it.
So we're going to take a few minutes now to process what you've heard today at your tables. And then we're going to give you 5 minutes at the end to do some journaling. So we're going to pass the journals around while you're reflecting at your tables, and then you'll be able to end with your journaling. And before our lovely panelists leave the stage, if we can give them one more round of applause.